So over the past couple of months, it has mainly predominantly been the fishermen in the newspapers saying, what on earth have you done to us? You promised that Brexit would be the best thing since sliced bread for the British fishing industry. But of course, as we have explained multiple times on this channel, the British fishing industry's problems were never the fault of the EU. Indeed, we have seen multiple times whenever we've covered fishing stories, you have seen places where about 80% of the catch from just one port, like in Brixham, for example, 80% of all that fish went to the EU. And this is not an isolated case. This is the majority. The majority of all of Britain's fish went to the EU. Why? Because one of the things we have cited continuously for a big problem in the fishing industry is that we British just don't eat fish anymore. We haven't for years. And there are numerous reasons why you can do that. There is also the problem of, small fishermen versus the large boat fishermen and even the trawler fishermen. There's the industrialization argument going on because you're literally arguing of, in this case, just to use a quick analogy, it would be like a farmer who uses an ox and plow complaining against a farmer who uses modern tractor equipment. That is the level that we are seeing here at play, and complaining that these guys catch, more fish than they do, because obviously they do. It's more modern industrialization. We've also seen the fact that jobs have moved from actually catching the fish to processing the fish, and massive improvements have been put on shore. There's a lack of actual investment in coastal communities, the lack of support from actually the British government to actually think about fishing. And there's all these things, and none of them were ever the problem of the EU. And now, as I've said multiple times before, we are seeing farmers slowly but surely start to creep in. And fishermen were never really important to the Tories, despite how, if you remember just back in December, how many Tories were crying as if the fishermen were like true heroes of Britain. The farmers, on the other hand, are completely different, because not only are farmers a core, and we mean core support in many Tory areas, but we also see that they are also one of a big funder and supporter of not only local Tory parties, but also the national Tory party as well. Remember, many of the Tory heartlands are built upon the idea of farming. And now, as I said before, slowly but surely, farmers are going to start to make their voices heard as well. And I think that what we are going to see today is but the start of a series of articles coming forward about farmers being more and more annoyed with the Brexit agreement that Boris Johnson said for them would be the best thing ever. So before we jump into that article, please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button. And if you'd like to support the channel in a different way, I do have a Patreon page as well down below. And if you would like to instead just give a one-off donation, I do have a link called Buy Me a Coffee where you can, buy me a coffee. And thank you to all those people who do support me those ways. So on with the article. So this comes from The Independent. The title is Brexit. Sales of milk and cream to the EU are down by 96%, and chicken and beef almost by 80%. So we've said before that these are serious There we go. So we have said before that this is serious problems with trade currently going to and from the UK to the EU, and this is going to affect thousands of jobs up and down this country. And the fact that farmers are now starting to feel the pinch, it's going to come very quickly, very fast, and people are going to start realising that Boris Johnson's deal was not really the best one. So, sales of milk and cream to the EU are down by an extraordinary 96%, and chicken and beef are almost down 80% because of Brexit, new figures show. Overall, the trade barriers erected by Boris Johnson's deal have cost exporters more than 1.1 billion since the start of the new year, the Food and Drink Federation says. The organisation said that it was essential that the UK urgently restart talks with the EU to resolve this crisis, something the Prime Minister has so far refused to do, and will refuse continuing to do, because, as we've said before, in this case, this government is going to be desperate in any way, shape or possible it can this year to try and prove that Brexit is a success. They don't really care beyond that, just as so long as that they can go to the public and say, oh look, hasn't Brexit been a resounding success, when it really, really hasn't. So the statistics are laid bare about how the withdrawal from the EU, rather than the impact of COVID-19, lies behind the collapse in exports since the transition period ended on the 31st of December. And we have also said that many of the Brexiteers are going to use the COVID-19 as an excuse to try and hide as much damage as they possibly can. And here we have numbers that show that it was not COVID-19 that is behind all this. It is Johnson's Brexit deal. So food and drinks exports to non-EU countries rose by 8.7% between February 2020 and February 2021, but fell by 40.9% to the EU. And Downing Street so far has rebuffed industry calls to reopen negotiations with Brussels, other than to try and resolve the legal crisis surrounding the Northern Ireland Protocol. But Dominic Goody, the FDF's head of international trade, has said exports to our biggest market, Ireland, have also dropped by more than 2/3. UK businesses continue to struggle with inconsistent and incorrect demands at EU borders, and small businesses have been hardest hit due to the collapse of the groupage distribution to the EU. It is essential that the EU-UK Partnership Council and its trade specialist committees are convened to urgently address problems. The FDS said that exports to the EU had partially bounced back, a 76% fall from January, but remained at 41% down from a year ago. And in addition, imports from the EU are down 17%, despite increasing from the rest of the world by 6%. What have we said? The world is not going to be a replacement for our loss of trade from the EU. Imports of pork, chicken and beef were down by more than 30%, and fruit and vegetables down by 21%. And 21% and 30% respectively. The Brexit trade deal has hit animal and plant products hardest because it failed to include an agreement to avoid the form filling and physical inspections on the so-called sanitary and phytosanitary controls. They are also already hurting exporters and deliveries to Northern Ireland, a problem that is set to grow when the full Irish Sea checks and almost crucially controls on imports from the EU finally come in. Last month, in a Lords committee, they warned about the plants and animal checks and would become a permanent barrier to trade unless the UK drops its opposition to a different deal. It rejected Mr Johnson's claims of teething problems, arguing the punishing red tape is here to stay unless an agreement can be reached with Brussels on common health and safety standards. And the only way we get that is if we join the single market and the customs union. That is the only way. But as we've said before, this government does not want to go anywhere near the idea that that is a solution to the problems, because these free market fundamentalists are now obsessed with the idea that, oh, it's okay, we can help, if we only had access to these emerging markets like Brazil, somehow going to replace the trade we lose from the EU. No. Brazil is halfway around the planet. Australia and New Zealand on the other side of the world. Our closest partners always will be the EU. That is not going to change. So us being outside the single market and customs union does not make a single bit of sense. And one of the things that has been often been echoed when you look at Brexit from a simple economic point of view, it does not make the single bit of sense to be outside these institutions. But our government, full of hardcore committed Brexiteers, are engaging in fantasy levels of disillusion and are obsessed with this idea that we can sort of become, once again, this magnificent trading nation, forgetting about the fact that they are referring to a time when Britain had an empire. Again, Britain doesn't have an empire anymore to rely on. We can't do that. The idea that we will get these amazing trade deals, and just to put it very clearly, we are seeing Liz Truss currently try and negotiate a deal with Australia and New Zealand. And New Zealand in particular, our trade for them is no more than about £1 million worth in trade. Roughly round about there. Our trade with Ireland alone, that is in the EU, is worth about 36 million. You tell me who is more important, New Zealand or Ireland? And that means if it's Ireland, then that means you have to accept that leaving the EU was a bad idea. So, as always, thank you for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button. And of course, down below there is a link to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee. And as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you all next time.